This morning, we actually started in Sunday school, and I think this is, to me, just an observation. We're going to talk about Moses and an observation, but to sort of make Moses real, I like having Bible characters that are real to me, not just written on a page that I read about, but people that really sort of come to life. And so when I look at that, the first thing that I have to do to look at it is have my glasses. Okay, otherwise it's just a blur. You know, you'd be surprised how much Nancy and Ken look alike without my glasses. No, they're both over there. We're going to talk about Moses and his staff, right? You remember the staff of God, the rod of God. Okay, so we're just going to sort of go through his staff and how it really benefited him, and then how he made a boo-boo with his staff. We're going to talk a bit about his boo-boo. Okay. Now, it was first mentioned in Exodus 4:2. It's while he was there at the burning bush, Moses is talking to God. And so this is out of Exodus 4. I'll just read these scriptures and this is, to me, is funny. Okay. I mean, if you've got a bit of comedian in you, you listen to this, you go, this really? What he said? He goes, and it's just God is just so in the moment. And so it's funny. It says, chapter 4 says, Then Moses answered and said, But suppose they will not believe me or listen to my voice. Suppose they say, The Lord has not appeared to you. This is after God has told him he's going to have to go lead the Israelites out and talk to Pharaoh. And so the Lord says to him, What's that in your hand? And he answers, It's a rod. Right? This is a weird conversation, right? So what's that in your hand? Well, it's a rod. Right? Throw it on the ground. So they throw it on the ground, it turns into a serpent. Moses flees from the serpent. He says, Come back, grab that serpent by the tail. Okay. Now here's a guy that just ran away from it, and I'm not big on snakes. I don't know how many of you are like snake handlers, but so Moses grabs it by the tail. It turns back into a rod. So this is our first instance of God and Moses and the rod. It gets more confusing as we sort of wander along here because this rod keeps coming up. Now again, it says he used it to part the Red Sea. Do you remember this in the scripture there about parting? Same rod. This is Exodus 14, verses 15 16. It says, And the Lord says to Moses, Why do you cry to me? Tell the children of Israel to go forward, but lift up your rod and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it, and the children of Israel shall go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. Same rod. And we'll see he's going to use it again in a minute. But he says, Why do you cry to me? Tell the children to go forward. Right? It's like he would have parted the Red Sea if they'd have just had faith. There would have had to have been no raising of the rod. It's just go. But they wouldn't. They complained all the time. Are you taking us out of here? We're not having anything to eat. You know, what are we going to do? We don't have a place to sleep. I mean, these are professional whiners, the Israelites. Oh, you got one of those. Okay, every family has one. Okay, it's and so here he is. He's dealing with them. So that God says to him, "Lift your rod up, stretch out your hand over the sea, and divide it, because these people will not go forward unless I demonstrate, that I've got the power over doing this." So that happens. Now, then we're getting closer to where the problems come, and it's exactly the same story two times, okay, but very different in what he says. The next one is when Moses brings water out of the rock at Massa and Meribah. And so Exodus 17, 5 and 7, it says, And the Lord said to Moses, Go on before the people and take with you some of the elders of Israel. Every time he sends Moses out, he's always saying, grab a few of the old folks, bring with you, right? Bring the elders, bring the people that know me, that I've been with. And he says, also take in your hand your rod which you struck the river. Okay, so he's telling you to get that same rod. Okay. This stick, the rod of God. He says, grab that, right? The one that you struck the river with, and go. And behold, I will stand before you there on the rock in Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water will come out that the people may drink, because they're complaining about not having water. He says, you will strike the rock, and water will come out. This is so metaphorically parallel to what we think about with Christ. God brought forth living water out of a rock, And in this case, we're seeing the rock struck with the rod. We're going to see how this changes in just a minute. So Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. So he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah because of the contention of the children of Israel and because they tempted the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" Right? And this is what they would constantly say. Remember this for just a minute. Is the Lord with me or not? He's brought me out of here. I got nothing to eat. I'm thirsty. We're wandering around. We're all going to die here. Oh, we're all going to die in the wilderness. We're going to die here. And Moses was like, no. And he strikes the rock and the water flows. Now, he uses that same rod again. Anybody remember where the next place is? He goes right straight from getting water out of the rock. This is my favorite story in the Bible because this is the one where each of you should remember that you are God to other people. People see God through you, okay? And so he takes this rod and he uses this staff in the battle at Rephidim, okay? And this is where he stands there on top of the hill and he holds the rod above his head for Joshua and the men to see while they're fighting against Amalek. And as long as he's holding that rod up, they win. And when he puts the rod down, they lose. Now, you think it has anything to do with the rod? No. It has everything in the world to do with the fact that they trusted that God was with them so long as Moses held the rod up. Okay? So he's holding up this rod, same rod that he struck the rock with. Okay? Same rod that he parted the Red Sea with. Same rod that turned into a serpent that he grabbed by the tail. I won't do this today, but there's a lot of places that people think that rod are today. It's actually fun to go look it up and see. Even in the Islamic faith, they claim to have the rod, okay, at a museum in Istanbul. But this rod, so here's what it says in Exodus 17. It says, "Now Amalek came and fought with Israel at Rephidim. And Moses said to Joshua, 'Choose us some men and go out and fight with Amalek. And tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the rod of God in my hand.'" And you remember he gets tired and they have to prop his arms up. And it's because they only had faith that God was with them if they could see Moses and see the rod of God. That rod, a lot of power for these people. Moses, a lot of power for these people. Each one of you, a lot of power for other people. When you hold your hands up, they see you. And if you don't put your hands up and give them confidence and faith, then you miss an opportunity to demonstrate God to them. And then finally, the whole of what I want to talk about is this rod. And this is Numbers 20:7 through 12. And this is really sad, okay, actually. The Lord speaks to Moses saying, "Take your rod and your brother Aaron and gather the congregation together." He does this all the time. Grab Aaron, grab a rod, come on, put those things together. "And then I want you to speak to the rock before their eyes, and it will yield its water. Thus you shall bring water for them out of the rock and give drink to the congregation and their animals." So Moses took the rod from before the Lord as he commanded him. He's doing just like he did at Massah. Okay? He's got the rod. And then Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock, and he said to them, "Hear now, you rebels." Now, he called them that all the time. This isn't even unusual, just a bunch of whiners and complainers. And he says, "Hear now, okay, you rebels, must we bring water for you out of this rock?" Then Moses lifted his hand and he struck the rock twice with his rod, and water came out abundantly. And the congregation and the animals drank. Okay. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, "Because you did not believe me to hallow me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them." Okay? Now, what did he do with his rod that he hadn't done before, right? Before he said, "Strike the rock, water will come out." Now he said, "Speak to the rock." But Moses said, "Must we bring water out of the rock for you? Must we do it?" Okay. Must we, Aaron and I, because this is the two that come down. Must we? Here's a man that trusted God, saw him in the burning bush, led the people out of Israel, brought water from a rock with a rod, and then, in some reason, he took the credit for God's work. A man devoted to God took God's credit. Okay. Why do you do that? We'll talk a bit about that. Why does that happen? Why do we want God's credit? You know, I believe I saw my daughter come in and my granddaughter. Okay, now I'm nervous because they think of me the guy that just drinks coffee and tells stories. So here we are. We're at that point where it's just he made a mistake. Now there's a real possibility. Why did he do this? Why did he do this? Why? Because he starts out with the statement. He says, "Here now, you rebel." Okay, was he angry? Okay, did he do this out of anger? Now we know Moses got angry a lot. Okay, Moses was an angry man, right? So if we go to Exodus 32, it says, "So it was, as soon as he came near the camp," this is when he's coming down off the mountain, okay, with the 2 tablets in his hand. This has always been a crazy verse for me too. And he saw the calf, the golden calf, and the dancing. So Moses' anger became hot, and he cast the tablets out of his hands and broke them at the foot of the mountain. Okay. 2 tablets that God carved words on with his finger, and he throws them on the ground and breaks them out of anger. Okay. This is a guy. Anger is a part of Moses. So was he angry with them? Was he so angry he took his rock and he whacked the rock twice in order to get the water out? Right? Maybe he was angry. Okay. Was he frustrated? Surely he was frustrated. This is the biggest bunch of whiners he ever worked with. I mean, it was like, wow, why'd you give me these people? You could have given me 100 people I liked, right? Okay. Instead, you gave me tens of thousands of people I can't stand. Was he disobedient? Okay, just being disobedient. And if you look through the Bible's filled with stories of disobedience. We could take a few. We could start with Eve. Don't eat off that tree. Disobedient. Jonah. I'm going to go get in that boat and leave. I'm not going down there and preach those people in Nineveh. Disobedient. King Saul, he was told destroy everything, but he kept the king and the livestock, the best livestock. Disobedient. Was Moses disobedient? And then there's a word in philosophy that I want you to remember. I put it in here in the title, okay? Because the opposite of disobedient would be obedient. And so why do we sometimes become disobedient? And why in society and the world today do we see people becoming disobedient? And there's a word it's called solipsistic. Anybody know solipsistic? It's a great word. Okay, you know the word. Okay, solipsistic. Yeah, I practice on other people. It's torture for them. But solipsistic, I had to practice pronouncing it. Not as a solipsistic. It comes from Kant, and he wrote a book on solipsisticism. And solipsistic is as simple as this. The word solus in Latin means alone. Ipsi means self. Okay, so solipsistic is self-alone, self-reliance. It's me. Okay, does that make sense? So when you see this, it's not like egocentric. It's very different than being egocentric, where it's all about you. It's really more just self-alone. And self-alone is kind of an interesting term because I think that it is it's common. I think it definitely for men and for women that we like self-alone. We like saying things like I did, we did, he did, because it just comes out, and I'll explain that in a second. It comes out as a strong affirmation of us, right? It is egocentric, but it's us. I've watched these shows occasionally of these people that like to live on the Arctic Circle by themselves. You've seen these people that want to just live and subsist, and they build these cabins and they live out there and they fish and they hunt and they're completely subsistent by themselves, right? That's the epitome of solipsistic, right? Because that's them completely being self-reliant. Is it egocentric? No, it's all about, I can do all this myself. Okay? It's a crazy thing. But Moses was definitely, it was about him. Now, there's some reasons that we do this, and that our need to take credit is so great, and they fall into a bunch of different categories, and we'll go through a few of them. One of them psychological reasons, right? And each and every one of us, and we've been taught this too, that we need self-esteem and validation. Would you believe that? We teach that, we think that about our children. They need self-esteem and we need to validate them. Okay? We need to do that, okay? Because taking credit boosts our self-esteem, right? When we say, I did this, right? I was responsible for this. I'm going to tell you about some things that happened in my life in a minute and why. But it makes us feel more valuable and more competent. Does that make sense? So we do that. And we do that for our children to build up their self-esteem. Oh, that was outstanding. I mean, I can't believe how well you ran in that race. I can't believe how well you did on that test. We do that so that we're building up their self-esteem. We're really building up that self alone. You can do this by yourself. Okay, we reinforce that through some of the things we say. A sense of achievement. Claiming credit provides us a sense of personal accomplishment. And we all seem to really want to show that we can do things, right? It's important for us to be important to others and that we can achieve things. Control. We like positive outcomes. We like control over our lives. And there's some people that have experienced being in lives that are out of control that you see need more and more and more control. So they love self alone, right? Self-reliance. They want it to just be me. I don't want to be dependent on anybody else. I was dependent on him and he let me down, right? He left me. I was dependent on her. She let me down. She didn't come home last night. I mean, it's like that, the kind of dependence. You want to be completely in control, and control is very important to people. There's recognition and status in social and professional settings. We're credited with our success, our reputation, our influence. All of our opportunities are on what did I do? What is your resume? Self alone. Okay? When you do a resume or CV, you fill it out where you talk about all what you've done. Right? A few people have gotten to where they do teams, but even a team could be self-alone because a group of people equal one person if all you're doing is talking about what the team accomplished. Right? Just again, it would just be group alone, right? But still self-alone. Competition, boy, I'm telling you, we like to gain advantages when we're at work. We like promotions, we like rewards, we like prestige. And so self-alone, I did this, right? I should be promoted, I should be rewarded, right? Belonging, woo, this gets lots of people, including me. Right? We want to foster a sense of belonging and being significant to our family, right? I'm important to my family, right? I'm important to my community, my job, my church. I want to feel like I belong. And so I want to do something myself. That's why self-alone. I want to do something that makes them want me, makes me belong to that. We have a cultural emphasis in this country on individuals. I mean, this is a very individualistic country where it's personal success. We look at celebrities. If you read psychology today, it's going to be all about what did you do, right? What are you doing? How's your self-esteem? It's all about self-alone. It's about being really essential. Performance metrics. Yes, tied to our benefits, the tangible benefits. Everything is about what did I do? Right? When you fill out your performance evaluation at the end of the year, right? It's what did I do? What am I going to pay me for? What have I accomplished? Right? It's all about solipsistic, right? Self-alone, self-reliance. We have a lot of social expectations around self-alone. We have a bias to attribute success to our efforts. And to attribute failures to external factors, right? Which normally this is called rationalizing. And I've had to fire a lot of people in my life, a lot of people, thousands of people. I've done a lot of it personally. And when you're sitting there, it's the ones that's head drops and they begin to sob. I immediately have HR get the employee assistance people come in and help. The ones that say, you're an idiot, you have any idea what I've done for this company, you have any idea what I accomplished, I know they're healthy. Their immediate reaction is to rationalize the fact that they haven't done anything worthwhile in a year. Okay, but it's my fault, right? It's all my fault they do it. And we do that all the time in order to maintain control because we want to make sure self alone is okay. We want our self-esteem to be maintained, so it must be somebody else's fault, right? I'm drinking too much, it's somebody else's fault. right? I can't do my job. It's somebody else's fault, right? My children are terrible. It's somebody else. So-and-so let them into drugs, right? It's got to be, you externalize it. And we see this, but so what did taking credit for God's work get Moses? Well, it got him the consolation prize. He didn't win the big prize. He didn't get to go into the promised land. He got the consolation prize. I'm going to let you go up here and stand up there. I'll let you see it. Okay? That's it. You get to see it. Because he took credit for God. And so I pondered preparing, because I'm afraid I do this. Do I want credit for what God does, and how do I do that? So I was thinking about me, just because I realized that I think the most important part about standing here or teaching Sunday school or anything is I really pray that something happens in my life this week where I can tell you how God worked in my life this week. I don't want to be something I learned at school 35 years ago or something that happened to me a long time ago. I would really like to have God alive and at work in my life every day and then have something to tell you about that now, right? Not something that happened in the past. So I'm actively seeking that, but I also know that I actively take credit for things I shouldn't. And so, having recognition, there are awards that are passed out for being best in your field, best in your occupation, highest performance. We award this, right? That's giving credit to us. Having a large home or nice car, right? Those are ways that you can say, see what I did? Right? Self-alone, I did that. Right? I have the best genetics in my cattle of anybody in the country. I've got the largest home. I have the most beautiful wife. I mean, all of us should say that. That's really important. Having successful children, right? How many people have you sat with that'll sit and talk to you for an hour about their children? That's them, self-alone. We raised those children. We taught those children. And they talk about what they did and how they took them here, they took them there. The growth of a church. I've heard pastors talk about, do you have any idea how many people we baptized? Right? Self-alone, because that's all they concentrate on. The size of gifts that you give, donations, etc., self-alone, right? When you talk about, well, I was able to give such and such, right? Or, we were able to do this, or it's self-alone. So, but how do we acknowledge God in everything that happens, as opposed to being the one that takes credit for it? And I'm talking about everything. So I'm going to get down to, I was telling Sunday school class, that I find that this secular worldview creeps into my life, right? It's like when I watch TV, it makes me want to take credit for things, makes me want to be acknowledged, right? So it emphasizes, when you watch television, it emphasizes personal effort. It emphasizes skills, right? It emphasizes sort of human collaboration as the primary drivers. Teamwork. There's hundreds of books, how teamwork creates success, etc. Many of those things are true, but they do not acknowledge who actually makes everything happen, and that's the Lord. And I'm talking about everything, right? And so you don't give credit to the school board or to a music teacher. I mean, it's just that you don't do that. In the end, you've got to stop and say that God's at work in everything. The good and the bad, actually, because we don't understand that the bad's his way of preparing for the greater good. Okay, because we don't have a full understanding of the picture. But do you fail to acknowledge God because you're afraid to do that? I know this. I'm past this at this point. I'm at work. I've got atheists, Muslims. I've got Jews. I mean, I've got as diverse a faith group as you have, and every single one of them would tell you that I'm a Christian. And I would tell every one of them when they say you're a Christian, I'd go, gosh, I hope I don't have to tell you that or wear a T-shirt. Is what I'm doing, really doing that? Am I acknowledging God? But we're afraid. There's criticism, skepticism. There's uncomfortable situations, particularly at work. We're sort of called on to tamp our faith down these days when we're outside of this building. Because I don't know if you'd agree with that or not, but it's uncomfortable to go out and say, God's what drives me. But so I'm going to end now because I'm going to try to beat Freddie looking at his watch. And that is, I'm going to tell you what happened to me last week, okay? And how God works. And you can think about me whatever you would like. And I've got people heaping praise on me this week. And you go, why do I not deserve it? Because I'm going to explain to you how there's no possibility it was me. Okay? And I'll tell you what my prayer was. It's going to make me a bit vulnerable here, but it's okay. About a week ago, I told the Sunday school class this. I was 2 days away from not being able to make payroll at the company. Okay, and meaning you have to put the chain on the door and tell everybody, call an all hands meeting and say, you're not going to be paid. 2 days away. That's close, by the way. That's close. And I also owed, and these, I've run companies that, okay, see, this is an ego thing. Listen to me right here doing this. I've run companies that where I $2, $3, $4 billion I had to raise $40 billion market caps. But I'm telling you, money is scalable. Sometimes it's as hard to get $100 as it is to get $1 billion. And sometimes that $100 is more important than $1 million. And so I was at a point where we were out of money. I couldn't make a payroll. And our payroll runs about $1 million a month. Okay, and I was going to miss mid 2-week payroll. And there was no way to make it. And I owed vendors, people that had sold us things. We hadn't paid them in a year. Okay, so we have a young lady that does accounts payable that for a year they've screamed and yelled at her, and she said, we have integrity. I know that we're going to try to do this, one thing and another, but you're trying to get people, and not one of them sued us, okay, in a year, okay, with terms, 30 days, same as you, is the terms on it. Not one of them sued us. Most of them did yell at us, but a good number of them yelled at us. You should expect that when you don't pay people. Okay. But all of a sudden, on Thursday of this past week, we have $15 million in our bank account. We can run the company now for 2 years. Okay, so where'd the $15 million come? Did I sell something? No, I didn't do that. I didn't do anything. Okay, did small caps take money out of that, move it over to micro caps, and so as a public company, we benefited from a shift in fungibility of money in the markets. Okay, that happened actually. Was I prepared? Okay, because I had an S3 that was filed that I could take advantage of what they call an at the market, where you sell 10 to 20% up to 100% of the daily volume, and you get the money for the shares that you sell, and you can use that for capital for your company. We were ready. Okay. Did I select a group of bankers in New York that I know well, that can trade shares as well as anybody I've seen, that know how to place it out there, that know how to do that cat and mouse game of trading shares at the desk? Okay, and they did it for 3 straight days. Okay, and the money that we raised cost total 5%, total. There's no interest in the future. The money I paid the 5% as I collected the money. They gave us, we got $1, we got 95 cents of it, and the people that helped us raise it got 5%, and that's all the money I have to pay them. Okay, this is like what you call at our level of risk. Raising money now is around 18%. Believe it or not, that's what you could expect to pay. It'd be 16 to 18%. But we raised the money 5% total. No interest, no warrants, no converts. Some of these terms may be foreign to you, but it means that no strings attached. Okay, I got the money, paid the 5%, I'm done. Okay, so that money is in our account. I don't owe anybody anything in the future. I didn't promise them anything for that. But it's nothing I did. God provided the money. Okay, so why? Okay. Because I prayed just like Moses for the last 2 or 3 weeks, where he said to God, do not destroy these people after you've brought them out of Israel, because you don't want the other communities to look at you and say you brought them out of Israel brought them out of Egypt to kill them. Okay, he said, don't do that. Let the credit be yours for turning these people around and letting it change. He said, let's do that. And so I was on my knees, and I went, Lord, I'd really like to do more with First Wallace Baptist Church, but it's hard to do more when you're working 7 days a week trying to raise enough money to run a company and to make payroll and to meet the obligations for AP. By the way, we paid off all of the accounts payable that were required. We're completely caught up. I've never seen a happier bunch of vendors. It's like that. Some of them didn't think they'd ever get it, but they did. But I prayed. I said, Lord, help me get out of this so that I can do other things. I want to do other things now. I want to spend more time on my faith. I don't want to have to do this, and this is killing me. And I'm praying for killing me, meaning I feel hugely accountable for it, even though that's the weirdest thing. I know it's God, and I haven't learned to surrender everything yet. So I'd be the first one to tell you, if you're really stressed out, I would give you a hearty hi-ho, high five and say, you and I both. Why? Because we think we do stuff. Yeah. As long as we're obedient, we don't need to give a thought to that. Okay. As long as you're obedient, as long as you speak to the rock and don't whack it with your staff, and you're obedient, you don't need to worry about that. You're not accountable for the outcomes. But I mean, it's amazing. So what are some of the other things that happened during the week that just gave me absolute confidence in God, to where it makes me want to speak to the rock and not take credit for anything? I do not want to be whacking rocks, okay, and saying I did anything. Dwayne Vowell becoming a member here at First Wallace Baptist Church, nothing lifted my heart more than listening to Wayne talk about his salvation, right, and his baptism. I looked for my keys for 2 days, and I was distraught. I shouldn't be this way, but I don't know how you are about losing things. But when you lose something, some people can just ignore it and replace it. Me, I will go and look for a 50-cent item and spend 3 hours looking for a 50-cent item and go and be depressed when I can't find it. I've been looking for these keys, which actually opened up the gate to the apartment where I live during the week. And I was praying, on my knees praying. I do have a gardener's nailing pad because my knees hurt after a while, and it got to where I'm praying longer and longer. You guys need to reduce the amount of needs you got. I'm just kidding. But while I'm sitting there praying, I got up and I looked on the bed, at the foot of the bed, and there were the keys. Okay, I've been looking for these things for 3 days, 3 days, and they're right there. And I go, wow, God, in plain sight. I need to get a prescription filled yesterday, and I went to Walmart over here, and they said, we can't fill that prescription. And I drove over to Walgreens, and I said, is it possible that the pharmacist said, I'll fill that for you. And they gave me the prescription. Okay. If you have any idea how hard it is to get prescriptions filled these days, getting to switch pharmacies and not have any paperwork prescriptions there and getting a prescription filled, I'm just incredibly blessed. I brought in a technical advisory board of the smartest people in oceanography in the country, in the United States. I didn't bring them in. I talked to these people. God brought them. These people are brilliant. The things that they said changed how we look at the industry and understand working at depths of 11 kilometers below the surface of the ocean, 11,000 meters. And they're giving us advice. And I was inspired by these people because I'm like, but now, did I play a role? I called the people and asked. God brought us those people because we need to know how to work at those differences. I was talking this week to a Muslim who lost his mother. She's a single mother in Cairo. She raised the family by working 3 jobs. And I got to sit and talk to him for an hour about his faith in my office. And he's a devout Muslim. And he said, you're amazing. And I go, I'm not amazing. Okay, I had a lunch with the Hindu on Friday, and the Hindu, and he said something as some sort of koan or something like that out of Buddhism, and he was saying, you are this, and he was talking about being a sage, and I went, I am no sage. Okay, if I appear as a sage, it's only because God is working in my life. Right? So any appearance that you might attribute to me, do not attribute that to me. That has nothing to do with me, because me, to my own devices, sole alone, I would do it alone, and I would want the credit. So as I look at my life and I look at our church, God's working here. Give him credit for everything. And that's the good and the bad, because out of the bad can come good, because God has a purpose for all of it. And we don't necessarily understand all of it. We don't necessarily agree with all of it, but he is in control and not us, so long as we have faith and we don't usurp from him the credit that he deserves. And he does not like it when you do that. So remember, if you're asked to speak to the rock, talk to rocks, right? Don't whack them with your stick. And the significance of it is it has nothing to do with hitting it with your stick. I've read so many articles on this week. He shouldn't have hit it with a stick twice. Forget that. He shouldn't have taken credit for bringing water out of the rock. Okay? It's like, do not take credit away from God. The things in your life that are going well, acknowledge God. The things in your life that you're struggling with, pray for help. Right? But know that God is in control of all that we do, and just focus on that. Let's pray. We'll have a song and an opportunity. If you'd like to come talk, please come on down. And otherwise, let's get ready to go prepare for the weather. Lord, let each of us just see you in everything. Let each of us give you credit for all the good things that happen in our lives. Let each of us seek you when we're struggling. Lord, just make you the center. I wish I had a ability to coin a word. Instead of solipsistic, I would call it sodeosistic, and it would be God-centered. And so God alone, sol deus. I would prefer, Lord, if you could just keep changing me to where everything is God alone. And that is as much as possible, you can help and protect me from taking credit for anything that you do in my life, whether it be financial, whether it be spiritual, whether it be in my family. Lord, just let all the credit be yours. And I just thank you for how you work in this church and in the lives of the people here. Be with us as we prepare for this week. In your name we pray. Amen.